The most overwhelming problem that strikes you when you start looking into the history of Haiti is its abject poverty. And this was the problem that we were focusing on in our earlier work before the earthquake hit. And our goal was to tackle some of the ecological underpinnings of Haiti's immense poverty. The country has lost 97% of its forest, has enormous rates of soil erosion, and these things contribute to enormous flooding risks, makes it very hard for people to grow crops, to maintain houses and sources of livelihood. So the country is the poorest in the Western Hemisphere, one of the poorest in the entire world. The well-known findings from studies of disaster impacts is that poor countries are hit much harder than wealthy countries. The building stock is more fragile, the ability to respond is much weaker. And so the fact that Haiti was extremely poor meant that its response to the earthquake was going to be especially problematic and the casualties are going to be very high. So our particular project was called the Haiti Regeneration Initiative. This was launched by the United Nations Environment Program, which sought the assistance of the Earth Institute to help design a strategy that could be rolled out across the entire country to make the watersheds of Haiti sustainable. And this was going to require expert advice from Columbia researchers on strategies for reforesting the hillsides, for achieving sustainable transition strategies for charcoal production, and engaging in hydroengineering interventions that would reduce the flooding risks.
I think the Earth Institute has a significant contribution to the bridging the gap between technical expertise and practical work on the ground. And in Haiti in particular, one of the weaknesses we saw was bridging the gap between scientific advice and development practice. And so there's a lot of areas I remember visiting where you had excellent community groups and NGOs on the ground working on reforestation and working on agricultural development, thinking about strategies for planting, techniques for planting, the right types of soils. But these weren't thought about at a strategic scale, and they weren't always backed with solid science. So one of the weaknesses you would see is not thinking about the relationship of the upper watershed areas to the lower watershed areas, and what was the relationship of certain types of crops to soil conditions and to preventing erosion. And so I think the Earth Institute brings a combination of expertise from solid ability to look at water resource management and the hydrology of these watersheds, to significant experience in Africa looking at agricultural development.
We're living through a time in which many parts of the world are living through periods of unprecedented stress. Poverty levels are very high, ecological damage is extremely high, social change is problematic, political stability is challenging. Addressing all of these interconnected problems requires combining state-of-the-art research with a commitment to experimenting on the ground with new solutions. The Earth Institute is engaging in these efforts in many locations where the challenges are extreme. Haiti is just one more example where all of these problems come together in apparently overwhelming ways. What we're trying to do is to bring the cutting-edge researchers together with people working on the ground to find workable solutions to make these problems less overwhelming and to start turning the tide and achieving progress.
Prior to the earthquake, we had a large focus on vulnerabilities and reduction of disaster risk. And now that the post-earthquake, what you've seen is not just a shift in the concentration and centralization, or what will now be decentralization, but you've lost your primary source of coordination, which is Port-au-Prince. And so our project, the demands of the countryside and the pressures and the risks have not been reduced. If anything, they're going to be aggravated. The shift in population, the changes in rural dynamics and need for already dependent on food aid and now just increasing need for support in agricultural development. Our project, the core tenets of it haven't shifted, but the realities on the ground have changed. And so what we need to do is think about how to adapt our rural reconstruction and integrate it with the reconstruction of the urban areas.
The immediate priorities in helping Haiti recover are focusing on the urban reconstruction efforts. There's just an enormous humanitarian need at present, ongoing health and food security crises, security problems. This will be followed by a cleanup and rebuilding effort that for the time being will be the highest priority for the country. However, the problems that were plaguing the country before the earthquake are not going away. The hurricanes are not going to go on hold. The soil erosion is not going to stop. The agricultural yields are continuing to fall. So it's very important that we remember that these long-term problems are also quite acute. And if we don't address them, the country as a whole will remain in very difficult circumstances. So we're committed over the coming year to ramping up a set of interventions in coordination with our UN partners aimed precisely at bolstering agricultural yields in the countryside, reforesting the most eroded hillsides, and reducing the risk of storm surges and floods. In the long term, Haiti has a completely unknown future. Its position in the world is virtually without precedent. It's a country that's nominally been independent for over 200 years, but for most of its existence, it's practically had a shell of a state. And its recent history is no exception. It's been a very, very weak, if not outright failed state. The promise for the future is to convert all of the goodwill that exists within the country and in the international community into what would amount to be a virtually unprecedented turnaround in which we can achieve joint strategies at reducing the trends in poverty, at restoring the functioning of the ecosystems to make the place a safer place to live, and by doing so provide a foundation for restoring political stability to the country. It wouldn't be realistic to pretend that these challenges aren't enormously difficult, but I think this is the best possible time to achieve success on them, because we do have a degree of political stability that's relatively good in Haiti's history, and we have a very high level of commitment from the entire international community. So if we can put the pieces together and combine it with good science, we've got a good chance at success.
Despite the tragedy and the suffering that's occurring now, I think we have an opportunity to reimagine the direction and development of Haiti. And I think the development community has been working on that and really making steps and progress in the last year. But now is a time when your basic assumptions of supply chains and social infrastructure are changing. So I think we have an opportunity to really think about strategic development in Haiti that integrates the environment, the restoration of the environment, with poverty alleviation and economic development. And I think it's an opportunity for the government of Haiti, the people of Haiti, and academic institutions like ours to work collaboratively with the development agencies to really implement some of these plans that had really been thought out in the last year. So a lot of the advice and preparations are in place, and now the opportunity is to integrate that in a new vision moving forward.